It's International Women's Day and a fantastic opportunity to talk about women and what they've done to enact change despite the oppression that they might face. So I thought this video could look at the top five is wrong, obviously, there isn't like a top five of women, but the five kind of genres of studying women that could be really, really helpful to incorporate into your home ed, why they're helpful, and also maybe some tips of how you can do that throughout the whole year as well. It's going to be quite jam-packed full. I'll try and make it as quick as I possibly can, but if you want to skip to chapters, you can see that in the box down below as well. So firstly, we can talk to our children about women who are in stereotypical men's world, especially areas like science, technology, engineering, or maths. We know that these are often areas that have been dominated by men and that it's been very difficult for women to kind of get a foothold in, even being banned at certain points and now being in the minority. So it's a really great place to start is by focusing on some of those individuals. Like Patricia Bath, she was a scientist, an inventor, she was a humanitarian, and she invented basically the best ways of getting rid of cataracts in eyes. It's life-changing for people that I know, and I'm sure for people that you know. And in most of those circumstances, from being a kid winning awards to being on the faculty in very prestigious places, she was the first woman. And I can imagine, especially in kind of the 50s and 60s and 70s, how tricky that would have been. Why is it important to talk to our children about women that have excelled in stereotypically male roles? Well, because first of all, it shows that your gender doesn't determine what you're interested in or what you are skilled at. And secondly, it shows the oppression that women have faced, because if it took until 1970 whatever for a woman to be the first member of staff in a certain place, we need to know why, and that's going to highlight some of the oppression that women have faced. And so we're going to be able to show our children how to push through those barriers, but also how to prevent being the people that put those barriers in place as well. How do we do this in our home ed world? How do we make sure that we can teach this throughout the whole year, not just today? For me, it challenged me to think about the experts that I'm inviting into my children's lives, whether that's experts in just the practical things that we might be doing, the doctors that we meet, the engineers that we might meet that are fixing things in our house, or whether it's the books that we read or the people that we learn from TV, or even the classes that we attend. Have I got women represented there? Am I highlighting my female friends who are experts in their fields and intentionally getting them to talk to my kids or my kids to talk to them about what it's like being a woman in those situations? So I think, yeah, it's a good time to check who are the experts that are teaching our children, and do they represent women as experts in those areas too. So secondly, it's really important to teach our children about women at the intersections. You might have heard that word intersectionality bandied about, and I'm sure you already know, but if you don't, it's basically just where, just like an intersection, all those roads from different directions converging and meeting at one point. Someone's identity is often a little bit more varied than just being a woman, and they might face discrimination because of all sorts of identities that they have, whether that's disability, race, sexuality, religion, all sorts of things that can mean that they face discrimination, not just being a woman. And so it's women like Nicola Adams, who champion boxer, but she's gay, woman, black, neurodivergent, and yet has excelled despite discrimination that she would have faced from all of those. And so learning about women at those intersections is really important. Why is it important to teach that? Because our children need to know that people are complicated, life is complicated. It's not always as simple as A plus B equals C. People have different identities, they have different identities, and sometimes they can even be in conflict with each other. My son this week, we've been reading about colonization and Native Americans. My son is part Native American and part white British, like me. So he was like, well, so hang on, my ancestors colonized my ancestors. And it's to carry some of those tensions is kind of what being human is about. And so it's really important that our children are introduced to people who have those intersections at play. Now, how do we do this? I think by telling stories. Telling stories is really powerful. Whether that's stories that we are literally telling to our children, whether we're reading to them, whether we're meeting people who are talking about stuff, watching documentaries, stories are really, really powerful. And we don't have to necessarily do tons of activities based around those. We can just listen and make that storytelling part of our lives as well. Number 3, and I wish I could think of a better title for this, but the women that are becoming, those girls, those young women who are already inspiring others, already teaching others, already standing up for their communities. There are so many and it's so inspiring. I was about 22 when Greta Thurnberg was born, and there she is at 19 now, challenging world leaders on such important issues. And she started doing that publicly when she was 15 years old. And obviously, I think it's obvious why it's important that we should teach our kids about young women that are making a difference, because they are young women and young men too. And being able to see that children aren't the future, that they are the present, that they can make those changes now, that is so important. And especially because as home editors, our kids get to approach things in different ways. They maybe have the opportunities to be inventing things, to be entrepreneurs, to be activists in a different way than they might do if their time was dictated more at school. So I think these are really powerful examples. How we can do that, I think sometimes social media gets a bad rep, and I understand why, but when I think about the ways that these young women are engaging politicians, how they're engaging other people, how they are building up communities of activists, it's through social media. It's a really powerful way to connect with other people that share the same interests. It can embolden you to do things that you maybe wouldn't, because you're aware that you're not the only one doing it. It's a way to grow and share, and it can be so fantastic. So I think it's really important as home educators that we help our children navigate that we're teaching them how to do it safely, that we are not just labeling it as like the big bad, but that we embrace it for the good things that it can bring and has brought. So yeah, I think teaching our kids via social media, showing them things like with us filtering it when they're a bit younger, like my kids are, but then empowering kids to use it effectively and use it for real change is a powerful thing. Number 4, and these women are particularly inspiring to me, is the women that went first. Now, I know that there are lots of women in all of these categories that were the first, but by this I mean those that went first in sharing their vulnerabilities, their experiences, their struggles, and how powerful it was when they did that, and how brave it is to do that. Like the Me Too movement, it would not have happened or would not be happening if there weren't women that went first that were brave enough to share their experiences. And that's not everyone's place, but when women do that, when they share those experiences bravely, and then other people get to say me too, that's what builds community. And I believe that community is what affects change. So when I see women doing that, and when they inspire me to do that, I find it so empowering. And often I see women do this through very creative means as well. People like Frida Kahlo or Sylvia Plath, who talked about their journeys of fertility, for example, or portrayed that in their artwork in really dramatic ways that allow other women to see that or to read that and think, yes, me too. Those are amazing to me, and I think it's really important that we teach that to our children, because we're teaching emotional literacy. We're teaching them that being an inspiring woman isn't necessarily about being the strongest or the most intelligent, but it's about being brave, and also that the things that sometimes people perceive as weaknesses can be flipped around as well. And so, yeah, I think it's imperative that we teach our children about these women that went first. And I think that this is one where throughout the home ed year we can be doing through creativity, our artist studies, our poets, the things that we do, the sculptors, all sorts of things, the creative ways that women have expressed themselves, and allowing our children opportunity to do that as well in response to that. I think those are going to be key ways of, I guess, unlocking some of that bravery in our children as well, and in ourselves too, because obviously sometimes we have to be the woman that goes first with our children. And that brings us nicely on to number 5, and that is the women next door, the everyday normal women just like us. Like, I think of my Nana Lily. She was a small woman, she was a cleaner, she was a single mother, and yet she has influenced so many people. When I used to go and stay with my Nana and we'd go through Stockton High Street, and she always let me get a Greg's pasty and eat it on the street, which my mum never let me do. But I would be walking along, I'd be eating my Greg's pasty, and she would be saying hello to everybody. She knew loads of people, and she kind of knew their business as well, which was like, I loved how she was part of all these different communities. She influenced her children, who then influenced her grandchildren, and then her great grandchildren. And she was funny and fun, and these are the women that are going to be making the differences in our kids' lives, that they can talk to, that they meet every day. When I was talking to my kids about who are helpers in our communities and in our world, and who we could look to kind of see how to be a helper, and the first person one of my kids said was a home ed mum who lives a few doors down from us. And he spoke about how she was a helper and the skills that she had to be a helper and how we could be more like her. And that blew my mind, that we don't have to, sorry Twinkle, we don't have to download all these PowerPoints. We don't have to find the right books to use with our kids. We don't have to be kind of searching through documentaries to figure out who we can showcase to our children. We can just be in community, living lives with other women, and letting their lives speak to our kids. The messiness of them, the difficulties of them, the struggles, the successes, and celebrating that with our children. And because most home educating parents are women, we also have that powerful role to play in our lives, and I don't want to turn that into some kind of pressure, like I've got to be this like super inspirational woman to my kids, because they see me first thing in the morning, they know that I'm not that. But if I can authentically live before them and not be scared as well to tell them the things that I am doing well, and celebrate meanness with them as well, that's going to make a difference too. So I hope that didn't get too off on a tangent at the end. But talking about women is really exciting to me, because we're an amazing bunch and there are so many different women that we can learn from and grow from. So if you do want to do more, I've put a lot of links in the description box that will give you more information. But enjoy celebrating today and through the year, and let me know what you get up to.